Welcome to Vitality Unlocked. I'm Dan Garner, scientist, performance coach, and Chief Innovation Officer of Vitality Blueprint. This show does one thing: convert cutting-edge science into practical strategies for high-performance health. Each episode, we take one target and run it through a simple filter. Topic, mechanisms, current state of the evidence, and your next game plan. No fluff, no gimmicks. Hey there, and welcome to another episode of Vitality Unlocked. I am Dan Garner, and in this episode, we are going to be going over the science and application of using blood biomarkers to close the age performance gap. Blood brings that objective truth that you need to be able to identify the bottlenecks that are currently holding you back from performing at your absolute best. And when I say performance, I really just mean feeling great, physically and cognitively. And a lot of people think that you begin to feel very poor physically and cognitively as you age. Although to some extent, there are some things that you can't hold back. My observation is that a lot of this is behavioral, and a lot of this is people simply not knowing what their constraints are, not knowing what their bottlenecks are, not knowing what biomarkers are most important to actually feeling better. Sure, there are some biomarkers that are strictly disease-related. We're not going to be talking about that. We are a performance organization. Performance is in our DNA. We are the second baton. You use someone else to identify certain disease risks, but when you're ready for that baton to be passed to us, we take this baton and we bring it to performance. We bring it to, what's the name of the company? Vitality, so that you have maximum vitality in your everyday life now and as you age. So we're going to go over some metrics that I think are really important. But to set the stage a little bit, we got to talk about the myth that you've been sold. Everybody to this day talks about how everything gets worse as you age, decline is inevitable, performance past 50 is about survival and not improvement. And depending on who you talk to, they might say performance past 40. They might say performance past 30 if they're really bust up. Like, I don't know about you guys, but I've been in a lot of, hockey dressing rooms and locker rooms and these types of things. And there's people and gyms, of course, and guys are just like, wait till you're 40. Wait till you're 50. Oh, just wait till you're 60. Like, it's the prototype. These people are everywhere, and it's like they see it as their duty to give everybody a doomsday just because they experienced one. That has to end. We have access to so much science and so much technology to not just use these arbitrary things as excuses anymore. And maybe people are using them as ways in which to let themselves off the hook. That's just my age, so my behavior can be whatever it is. But the reality is that most age-related decline is not biological fate. It's untreated bottlenecks. That is the truth. What do we see in population data? Well, we do see a lot of, after a certain point, you're done. We actually see a lot of that. Like you see here, men and women, you look at performance and you look at strength specifically as people age. See, once you get, past that 40 mark, past that 50 mark, you can kind of see those trends start to go down. Strength gets weaker. Most strength loss is behavioral and not biological, though, in my opinion. People do not continue resistance training as they age. They kind of stop playing their sports as they age. They stop doing things. They may have retired. And then their job had a level of activity in it. And strength just really starts to go down. And these things are just so unbelievably behavioral at a population level instead of just a biological certainty. When you look at things like coordination, you see coordination actually begins to get weaker as well. And actually consistent coordination. What you're looking at here is people's neuromuscular coordination, but then their ability to actually sustain those efforts. So for example, sitting up and sitting down from a chair, but being stable, being balanced, and being able to hang on to that. But loss of neuromuscular precision begins a lot earlier than most people think. Like, you look back at that slide, you think you think about a shaking older person losing their coordination. You think, 80, 90, 100, something like that. Look where those curves start to go. You actually see those curves a lot quicker, a lot sooner than people think. A lot of that is actually strength related. But you see coordination and ability to repeat coordinated efforts. The time extends. That's actually what you're seeing on this graph here. It happens a lot sooner than people think, which means we got to find bottlenecks. a lot sooner than people think. That's something I think. Like people think aging begins at 40 or aging begins at 50 or 60. No, it doesn't. Aging begins now. Aging begins today. And the rate at which that aging occurs depends on your ability to objectively identify and manage bottlenecks. How about body composition? You probably know where this story is going to go. You look at massive population data of hundreds of thousands of people, you see the same thing. You see in men, higher visceral fat, lower fat-free mass, lower bone mass, overall lower output human being. In women, you see the exact same thing. People are reducing their bone mass. They are increasing their body fat. They are increasing their BMI in ways that aren't favorable to muscle mass. And the truth is that aging without intervention is just going to result in metabolic inefficiency. Aging without intervention will result in metabolic inefficiencies. You need to intervene as you age if you want to continue to feel great and perform as you age. But there's a reason why you are here watching this presentation right now. You understand that the data show averages, not destiny. So when your dad, your grandpa, the old guy in the gym, all these people, they're a part of the average. It doesn't need to be the destiny. Taking action now allows you to determine where you want to be as you move forward so you can be someone like this who breaks the pattern. And as always, all the population data I showed you is going to be linked in the show notes or the video description. You can download all the slides to this. I go through these pretty quickly because I want them to be high application for you. And I link all the studies that I go through so you can do as much homework on them as you want. But I want you to be the break in the pattern. Just look at the title of this study. Look at that title. How to be 80 years old and have a VO2 max of a 35-year-old. My highlighted quote. His cardiac pulmonary function are above expectations for his age. His VO2 max is comparable to that of an inactive 25-year-old and of a normal active 35-year-old. That's phenomenal. That's somebody who's 80. Remember those graphs and how soon strength went down? And how soon coordination got worse? How soon body composition got destroyed? Like that, there's a lot of things that happen way before 80. But when you dig deeper into this study, I mean, this guy had a VO2 max of 50. That's not just good for his age. That's good, period. I work with athletes. That's not just good for his age. That's good. That this is an active 35-year-old legit conditioned guy, and he's 80. His body composition stats, he's 49% skeletal muscle and 12% body fat. 12% body fat at 80. Anaerobic thresholds at 86%. So this basically means that his cruise speed is wild. He can maintain a very, very, very high level of output, and he can do that for a long time before he blows up. Like you actually only see that in very conditioned people. Someone who's able to stay like just right under that anaerobic threshold where they're beginning to produce more fatigue than they're able to recycle and produce back into energy. You have to train that. Like that's hard. It's very difficult to do. Very, very few people have it at all, let alone at 86%. Like this guy's cruise speed that he can maintain is completely insane. It's he'd beat my ass. I'll tell you that straight up. His lungs pull oxygen and get into the blood much better than what's expected for 80 years old. From blood to muscle, his total blood volume and hemoglobin mass is fantastic. He has huge oxygen delivery potential. Under stress, his heart beats 175 and still pushes a ton of blood every single beat. So this is the guy that you would expect an older individual to not be able to handle that stress, not be able to sustain that stress. And heart is probably not going to get that high. You know, those old things. It's like 220 minus your age is your heart rate. Not when you are changing the game, not when you are somebody who is taking care of himself as they age in a really serious way. His habitual output is 10,800 steps per day and 2.5 hours of activity per day, not per week. 2.5 hours of activity per day, okay? Aging is not a linear decline. It's the accumulation of silent bottlenecks. Aging is not a linear decline. It is the accumulation of silent bottlenecks. You look at this guy, you see this. This is possible. This is possible. And this is where we need to start going with what we have access to with respect to training, with respect to our nutrition knowledge, our supplement knowledge, access to blood work, access to scientific information, even just like YouTube and things like this. Like that linear decline world, it's kind of a choice now. People can decide to go down that, or they can decide to take action, and they can decide to take action on things that they can really hang their hat on. And 3 things that I would like to have you hang your hat on today, 3 hat racks that I would like you to get comfortable with, are homocysteine, vitamin D, and hemoglobin A1C. Okay? Are there other biomarkers that are important for aging? Yes. Are there other biomarkers that are worthy of full episodes of Vitality Unlocked that are important for aging? Yes. Is this an entire blood panel? No. Okay. So why do I want to highlight 3? Well, if we highlight 87, then I'll be talking for 87 years and my VO2 mix, then I've already been there. All right. Well, I've already been that. I haven't put my episode out yet. These 3, they're very, very, very well-rounded. They have excellent research behind them, and they're performance related. So these became like very, if I'm going to do a closing the aging performance gap episode, and I'm going to debut that on Vitality Unlocked, how can I keep the episode a reasonable length with amazing science, still performance related, still aging related? Homocysteine, vitamin D, hemoglobin A1C. That's where we're going to kick off. Many episodes in the future, we'll talk about other things, but I want to talk about these because they're very important for neuromuscular signaling, tissue remodeling and repair, metabolic health and metabolic flexibility, mitochondrial efficiencies. Like this is, if you know your physiology and you say, well, these markers are important for neuromuscular signaling, tissue remodeling, repair, metabolic health and flexibility, and mitochondrial efficiency, you're like, oh, they're involved in everything. These 3 touch a lot. They've got their fingers in a lot of physiological constraints. And that's why they're important to discuss. Because if these are a bottleneck that you have that you don't know about, that's a major bottleneck. Like, is someone walking around with an elevated HbA1c? Good luck feeling great every day. Good luck. Training's going to be really hard. And the idea here is like you don't want to close the aging performance gap, you don't want to just train harder. You want to remove the bottlenecks so that training isn't as hard. That's like an important thing to remember. When you remove bottlenecks, your training is less hard so that you can maintain these habits better along the way as you age, because physiologically you are relieved of constraints. You don't have sore joints. Your cognition feels good. Your recovery is on point. You're not like, oh man, I just don't recover like I used to. Well, you can. You just have one of these markers way off and you don't know. You're not taking action on it. So these are very, very, very widespread. They are true constraints. They're science-based, but also they're actionable. I'm not just showing you things that's like, hey, look at this. And then, sorry, genetics, like some biomarkers are. Now, you can actually correct all these. So this is going to be a really cool episode. Let's start with homocysteine. Some of the boring stuff here, and again, I've referenced things for you to look into, but homocysteine, it's a sulfur-containing amino acid. It's produced during the metabolism of methionine in the body, which is a good precursor for a lot of things. It plays a central role in methylation and antioxidant defense, so it helps us, it is involved, rather, in oxidative stress. It's involved with glutathione. It's involved in methylation, which is processing things out of the body. It impacts DNA synthesis, protein homeostasis, and cellular repair. But very, very, very long story short, increased levels are linked to increased cardiovascular and neurodegenerative risk. Okay, in the context of performance, there is cardiovascular and neurodegenerative issues here. What do we see? Well, we see, again, as you'll note with these biomarkers that I'll show you, they do get worse with age. These things actually do get worse with age without intervention. So you look here at 2,594 Chinese individuals. As you get older, homocysteine progressively goes up. Unsurprisingly, biomarkers, if you don't do anything about them and you're just getting older, things are going to start to break down. Here's a pretty cool study looking at actually creatine supplementation. A lot of people don't know this about homocysteine. Homocysteine actually gets improved with creatine status in the body. Creatine actually upregulates a lot of enzymes that are a part of homocysteine synthesis, so it helps regulate that. But in a study I'll show you, yes, right here, resistance training specifically, you see that bottom circled triangle that I have for you there? This is actually resistance training. It's a very effective ability to lower homocysteine status. So although creatine is involved in this enzymatic reactions of things that are important for regulating homocysteine by itself, in that creatine is by itself beneficial, the fact that creatine helps improve resistance training and resistance training helps regulate homocysteine is something that you get improvement as a byproduct from it. But if you look at that upper circled diamond that I have for you there, aerobic exercise actually doesn't statistically improve homocysteine status. So this is just a really interesting study looking at 520 subjects across 22 studies. So we're looking at a lot of things all at once here. And resistance training tends to reliably and effectively lower homocysteine status, whereas aerobic training doesn't. With a big caveat, this homocysteine actually is acutely increased after exercise. So independent of exercise duration and intensity, homocysteine status increases after exercise. So a lot of people ask me like, hey, and they just, maybe this is a bit of a sidebar rant, but I'm going to do it anyways. People are like, yo, maybe I should just get my blood work in my normal routine because that's a representation of my physiology. So no, stop. You need to control the blood work setting, or else it's always random. It's just all like, you need to stop supplements within a known time frame. You should be untrained within a known time frame. You should do your best to maintain hydration during that time, because that can throw off a lot of biomarkers. The idea that, hey, I should just get my blood draw done when I get it done because that was my body at the time, so that's a good reading. No, it means that we don't have a baseline on you. So like, we actually don't know what your body is at the time. We don't know what your body wants to be. You're on this amount of supplements, you're this amount of hydrated, you have this amount of training damage. Like, this is a good example. Like, homocysteine will go up after acute exercise. And then you could actually Google homocysteine and be like, whoa, man, this is connected to cardiovascular risk. This is connected to cognition. This is a real problem. I have to take action on this. Well, no, you just didn't control the setting. So if there is something that I could wish that I would almost stop getting the question about is, hey, can I just do this after training? Hey, do I really have to stop supplements? Like, bro, you can't stop a multivitamin for a day. You think you're going to die? Just chill out. You need a physiological baseline, or else it's very difficult to, and that's like one of the coolest things about blood work, is it's such an objective truth. So like, why would you throw a wrench into such a already beautiful objective truth? Don't do that. Okay, and this is a perfect example of that. So, sidebar rant, but control your blood setting every single time. Every time. It's very important. But all to say that aerobic training doesn't have that big of an impact on homocysteine status, but resistance training will reduce it if you aren't training damage during the actual blood draw, or else you'll see an artificial increase in it. But we do need to care about homocysteine status, because homocysteine is, as it increases, not as it decreases, as homocysteine increases, is related to neural fatigue, slower tissue turnover, worse cognitive resilience, and poorer recovery from training. So you're sore, you're less focused, your recovery rate between sessions is poor, your resiliency to life is poor. That's a bottleneck. That is a cognitive and physical bottleneck that, yes, it will reduce performance for sure, but that's going to bleed its way into work. That's going to bleed its way into relationships. That's going to bleed its way into a lot of important things in life. So this homocysteine increases as we age, and we have to look for that, because that's a lot of things that are popping there. Vitamin D status. Vitamin D, this is a more familiar one than homocysteine for a lot of people. Vitamin D is a fat-soluble micronutrient and prohormone. It's produced in the skin via sunlight, and it's found in food and supplementation. It's essential for calcium homeostasis, muscle function, and bone health. And deficiency is really common in athletes. Really, really common if they're indoors a lot, like me in Canada, indoors a lot, or if you're at altitude. That can impact vitamin D status as well. Vitamin D, as you see here, see homocysteine goes up with age, which is very unfavorable. And vitamin D will go down with age, which is very, very unfavorable. And again, I kind of want to just point this process out. See, like when that decline begins, Like people think that aging starts like at 60 or 70 or something like that. No, like aging starts now. Like on paper, time is passing right now, and we can decide to look at bottlenecks and take action on them, and remove the bottleneck, or at least be preventative towards it, or we can not make that decision and kind of just let aging take place until aging happens all at once. That's like something you'll find. Aging won't happen for you until it happens all at once. You don't want to be that guy. You don't want to be that girl. You want to be in that situation. Vitamin D supplementation. Yes, vitamin D supplementation works. Okay. Unsurprisingly, when you take 400 IU, 1000 IU, or 2000 IU, you have a greater vitamin D status. Even in 5 months in Antarctica, which was this study. Imagine doing 5 months in Antarctica just to do a vitamin D study, right? Yeah, it's more effective than having no pills at all. And that means it's more effective for a lot of things in your life. Also, of course, being outdoor matters as well. So people who spend a lot of time indoors, even if you're in sunnier environments, like I know people in Arizona and California, which are great sunny environments, but they spend all day indoors. So when you spend all day indoors, your vitamin D status is going to suffer. So your environment matters. Supplements work, sunlight matters, environment matters, food matters, and actually magnesium matters. This is one I don't see discussed a lot in the industry, but it is an absolute truth. 79%, according to NHANES data, 79% of the US population does not get enough magnesium on a daily basis. But you'll see highlighted here, magnesium supplementation increases vitamin D status when baseline vitamin D concentrations are less than 30, but decreases the concentrations of both in a dose-response manner when baseline vitamin D concentrations are higher, from 30 to 50. Well, what does this mean? Well, this study was very cool in that if you don't even give someone vitamin D, but you give them magnesium, then their vitamin D status will increase. Why? Because vitamin D plays a role in, because magnesium plays a role in vitamin D status. So if you don't, I don't know if I just said that correctly. I'm going to repeat myself real quickly. If you don't give someone vitamin D and you give them magnesium, they will increase their vitamin D status even though you didn't give them vitamin D. And that's because magnesium plays a role in vitamin D metabolism. And 79% of the US population does not get enough magnesium in per day. So when you look at this, and it doesn't actually take a long time to think about that, right? It's like, well, I hear constantly that everybody's low in vitamin D. And then you even use my example previously, right? How can you live in Arizona and be low in vitamin D? How can you be low how can you live in California and be low in vitamin D? Maybe you're not. Maybe you're low in magnesium status. And magnesium's impact on vitamin D metabolism is what's actually constraining your current vitamin D status. And then you'll see it does like a mix match in play once you get to an adequate vitamin D. And that's because there's a difference between vitamin D and 125 hydroxyvitamin D, which is the active version of vitamin D status, which magnesium also plays an important role in, of converting basically inactive 25 to active 125 in the body. So you'll see that in a deficient state, magnesium can bring it up, but then in a sufficient state, you're just going to see efficient conversion from inactive to active status in the body. But a very important call out, many people don't consider magnesium status and its role in vitamin D metabolism and all the things that magnesium does in the body relative to performance as well. So make sure that that is also in your toolkit. If you see someone with low vitamin D status, it can absolutely be magnesium. And then, of course, consider environment, exposure to sunlight, and these things as well. Why do we care about vitamin D status? Well, vitamin D plays a huge role in strength, injury risk, power, sleep, and immune system robustness. Vitamin D has its hands in a lot of things, and having an adequate status of it is incredibly, incredibly important for performance in general, let alone performance as we age. Moving on to hemoglobin A1C, or HbA1c for short. HbA1c, it reflects the average blood glucose of the last 2 to 3 months. So you'll see glucose on a blood panel, but it's very acute. It's a good marker. Glucose has been very, very well researched. You typically want glucose status to be around 85 or so. The range is anywhere, I believe, from 60 to 100, and then 120 becomes a problematic for diabetes states. But it's very, very variable because of what you ate the day prior can impact it. Stress can impact it. Many things can impact it. Whereas hemoglobin A1C kind of like smooths over those awkward data points and averages that out over the last 2 to 3 months. So you get a cleaner, more stable reading of what actually is going on with blood glucose in the body. It is very connected to broader metabolic health. And increased hemoglobin A1C status is linked to reduced exercise performance and increased cardiovascular risk. That makes a lot of sense. If you have chronically elevated blood sugar, that is not going to be a fun time for the cardiovascular system. The vessels of the body do not like that much blood sugar happening, especially in a chronic sense. And then, of course, that's also going to impact performance, because if there's one thing that's going to help energy status in the body, or the way in which you feel subjective energy, it's your ability to handle carbohydrates, your ability to regulate blood sugar. Everybody's familiar with the crash, but highs and lows are both unfavorable to performance and subjective energy, physically or cognitively. Again, what happens when we age? I mean, I'll show you the data just because I want you guys to know nothing here is my opinion. I will take you through the data every single time. And as people age, hemoglobin A1C goes up unless intervened, right? This is 6,776 Turkish adults. And as you age, HbA1c keeps going up. And I'm going to annoyingly repeat again, look how early that starts. Look how early that kind of just keeps going, right? Gotta always be on it. You look at a meta-analysis with HbA1c, training is associated to reductions in hemoglobin A1c. This is a total training minutes per week of 150 versus less than 150. And both aerobic and resistance-based exercise is beneficial for controlling blood sugar status. It's one of the best things that anybody could possibly do. However, when you look at training status and you look at athletes, it actually is important to diagnose the person and not just the biomarker. Because you'll see here, look at that graph. Look at sedentary controls versus pro cyclists and HbA1c status. What do cyclists do? A lot of endurance work. What do you need in order to perform a lot of endurance work? A lot of carbohydrates. What can happen to your blood sugar chronically if you're chronically involved in very high levels of endurance? You're going to have an elevated HbA1c as a byproduct of training, as opposed to a dysfunction of the body. So this is actually important. Like when I'm working with Ironman athletes or endurance or cyclists, just like this, you actually have to look at it appropriately and look at other markers of the body. Because if HbA1c is elevated dysfunctionally, you're probably also going to see elevated inflammation. You're going to see offset lipid markers. You're going to see other cardiovascular. You're going to see oxidative stress markers. These other signs of metabolic health issues are going to crop up. But when you're looking at an athlete and they don't have fatty liver, which is, you're going to see that in metabolic health issues, and you're not seeing any of these other things, and you know their diet, they're having 1,000 grams of carbs per day to suffice for XYZ thing that they're getting ready for, that's a very important consideration. And it's not something you necessarily have to like make the entire emphasis of a program. Again, not my opinion. There's plenty of research on this. HbA1c being as a marker of chronically elevated blood sugar actually kind of makes a lot of sense in somebody in endurance, because that's a chronically stressful thing, and it also demands a ton of carbohydrates. You do also want to get the whole picture. HbA1c is a little bit of a tricky one. Kind of like how I said, like, you guys got to look at magnesium when it comes to vitamin D status. HbA1c actually goes up when iron starts to go down. And since this is biomarkers for performance, I've posted this a lot in articles online. I'll talk about it again in Vitality Unlocked here. But it's very common for females to have low iron. And I mean like very common. I'm not talking like 3 to 5% of female athletes have low iron. No, it's high. It's actually really high. You look at college athletes, pro athletes, even high school athletes, their risk for low iron. Male athletes have a low iron risk as well, but females is way higher, like 5 times higher. I would guess it would be something close to that. I would say at least, honestly, at least that. It's a safe, like guarded recommendation that I can say here on a podcast. But low iron status is associated with elevated HbA1c. So again, it's kind of like, okay, look at the whole picture, look at the whole person, and make sure in athletes you're making that right call. Because low iron status, it can kind of make sense non-physiologically. Physiologically, it does make sense. You can look into the literature on pathways and things like this, but it also just kind of makes sense from a output perspective. If somebody has lower iron status, well, then their ability to carry oxygen around the body is reduced. If your ability to carry oxygen around the body is reduced, then your ability to burn through carbohydrates is also reduced. So if you maintain a level of carbohydrates that was previously comfortable to you, and you were actually previously burning through before, but now you're lower iron status, well, the number one symptom of iron deficiency anemia is fatigue. So then our actual output is going to reduce while our diet probably didn't change. And then if this happens just for 2 to 3 months, you're going to start to see hemoglobin A1C go up, and that can easily happen. They can easily, through a season of volleyball, you can have lower iron status, and that dramatically impact blood sugar regulation in the body. So something to look out for. I actually look at those two together. So if somebody is coming back and they've got low iron status to elevated HbA1c, I'm not doing this like enormous protocol. Like, oh, we do blood sugar first. Like, you want to look at both, and let's get iron status back where it should be. We need hemoglobin A1C corrected and regulated, because glycation stiffens tissues. Glycation is the damage from blood sugar impacting the vascular networks of the body and literally stiffening them. It will slow your recovery. It will impair mitochondrial respiration, and it will raise chronic inflammation. So chronic inflammation from chronically elevated blood sugars. Inflammation creates anabolic resistance in the body, so your ability to synthesize protein is less efficient. Inflammation makes joints more sore than they otherwise should be. Inflammation impacts cognition as well. I mean, you guys are probably starting to see why I chose vitamin D, homocysteine, and HbA1c. These things, I mean, it's truly everything. These three, and there are also known bottlenecks that are actionable. But like, holy, when it comes to aging with performance, keeping these three in your biomarker toolkit throughout the year, I think is mandatory. I think it's absolutely mandatory. I've already given some hints, like, hey, how do these affect performance? And physiologically, those of you who know your physiology and biochemistry, you already know how vitamin D, HbA1c, and homocysteine will affect performance. But this is the research podcast. Nothing is going to be just my opinion here. And when it is, I will let you know. But let's just look in the literature here, so you guys have rock solid examples that you can refer to. HbA1c, well, the higher our HbA1c gets, the worse our VO2 gets. You see, that's a very clear correlation happening there. VO2 plummeting down as HbA1c goes up. And by the way, 5.5, which isn't even that uncommon, that's like that's the upper end of the reference range. 5.6 is when you trip off your first pre-diabetes risk. I see that all the time. That is not hard to get to. A lot of people get to that. And you can see the people in this study that just keep going on to 5.5, 6, 6.5, and that VO2 just keeps going down. And that makes sense. It's going to impact metabolic health. It's going to impact your ability to actually utilize carbohydrates effectively. Fatigue and energy is going to not be where you want it to be in order to sustain a healthy VO2, and many other reasons. But just a good rock solid example, endurance-related HbA1c. Vitamin D, this is a big one. Vitamin D and its impact on strength. Vitamin D is one that actually stretches a lot. So you see vitamin D in strength, you see vitamin D in injury. This is one here as well Check this out. When examining time frame of injury occurrence in relation to vitamin D concentrations, 77% of reported injuries occur after an observed decrease in vitamin D status. Now, of course, this is a small sample size, but vitamin D, I encourage you to look at vitamin D in injury, actually, and it's not in this podcast, but vitamin D and ferritin are a couple of ones where, man, if those are like lab low, not suboptimal, but if they're lab low, that is an injury risk. That is something where you got to take action on that pretty quickly, because that person is at an increased risk of injury. This is just a cool study that I like to show, because 77%, like, sure, small sample size, but 77% is absolutely bananas. But vitamin D, or HbA1c, VO2 max, vitamin D, strength and injury risk. Vitamin D also for sleep. Like, vitamin D and sleep, I'll just look at this here. Supplementation actually improves sleep status. You could just see here, based on this data, you're looking at 130 participants, and you're looking at vitamin D deficiency and sleep duration scores. And vitamin D status of the body dramatically impacts sleep duration. You can see how that graph's distribution is from sufficient to deficient. It's completely, they're different humans, and they actually are. But those are completely different humans. But when you give those humans vitamin D, people don't see vitamin D as a sleep supplement. But you're looking at here a meta-analysis of randomized controlled trials utilizing the Pittsburgh Sleep Quality Index, which is the PSQI. I don't know if you guys have seen that in articles online, but it's a very validated sleep index score. And when you give people vitamin D, their sleep improves. But vitamin D, they're like, that's not a sleep supplement. But it is. Where do you get it from? Naturally, you get it from the sun. The sun is very important for circadian rhythm function. When you have optimal circadian rhythm function, you are at a much higher percentage chance of having a better sleep. That's why when you give people vitamin D, they will sleep better. If they were deficient, and not if they already are sufficient. I recommend having vitamin D in the morning, though. Some people have vitamin D before bed, but just biologically, it doesn't really make sense to me as a coach. When I think about it, it's like, all right, where am I going to get vitamin D from? The sun. Is it wise for me then to have a bolus dose of sun before bed? A bolus dose of sun even with dinner? Probably not. Like, it's wise to have vitamin D with breakfast, and ideally with some fats, because that does help improve uptake of it as well. But vitamin D being connected to a lot of things here. Homocysteine status, really connected on the recovery end, because it's associated to glutathione. Glutathione's one of those things where it's kind of like omega-3. When you talk about, like, what are the benefits of having an optimal omega-3 to 6 ratio inside the body, or having an optimal omega-3 status in the body. If you look up the benefits of that and you go through the research, it's kind of just everything. It becomes redundant, literally, to talk about all the benefits of having an ideal omega-3 status in the body. Glutathione's the same thing. When you talk about the benefits of having an ideal glutathione status in the body, it is right there with omega-3. It impacts absolutely everything. And why? Because it's the killer of oxidative stress, which impacts absolutely everything in the way you don't want. Homocysteine is a reflection of oxidative stress status, and glutathione is connected to homocysteine as well. I'd encourage you to check out this study. And as you improve glutathione status, homocysteine reliably goes down, which is controlling oxidative stress, which is very important for recovery. Homocysteine is also big in the world of cognition. Previously, and I probably shouldn't be doing this, but I'll do it anyways. Previously I said vitamin D and ferritin. Like, if those are low, that is something where it's like, yo, that's a flag for injury risk status. Homocysteine is one of those ones for cognition. If homocysteine is elevated, like if it's lab high, that is, we're talking about aging with performance. When a lot of people think about aging, they think just as much about their brain as they do about their body. Maybe they think more about their brain than they do their body. Homocysteine is one of those things to watch. Okay. Homocysteine, again, absolutely mandatory. Like, yes, this is a performance podcast, so I'm going to talk about its relation to glutathione and how that can impact your daily recovery from training. But cognition's huge. Homocysteine is one of those markers that's deeply connected to cognitive status, and you don't want it to be elevated. You want it to be regulated. Aging, of course, is multifactorial. There is a lot that happens with aging, and I'm simplifying it to a large extent. but these are actionable and very high ROI levers. If you have an optimal vitamin D, homocysteine, and hemoglobin A1C, you're in a pretty good spot. You're doing a lot of things that are really good for yourself in many, many, many ways. So I highly recommend, with respect to performance, looking and measuring and managing these biomarkers every single step of the way in life. What's the protocol? It doesn't need to be that complicated, you guys. You see right here, you've got homocysteine, vitamin D, and HbA1c. What do I recommend from a nutrition perspective? For homocysteine, B vitamin-rich foods and glutathione precursors. So your glutathione precursors are like your sulfur-rich foods. So things like in the sulfur family, like cruciferous. Avocado actually just straight up contains glutathione. And then your B vitamin-rich foods are like your red meats and also your dark leafy greens. B vitamins, a study I didn't actually show you here in this paper, but B vitamins help methylate homocysteine and help regulate it. And they actually work with omega-3 to help regulate and improve cognition and homocysteine status too, which is pretty cool. But B vitamins and glutathione are a very solid. Creatine also as well, but to a way, way lower extent. I don't want to over glorify creatine and homocysteine regulation. Really, omega-3, glutathione precursors, and B vitamins, specifically B vitamins, are phenomenal at this. Lifestyle for homocysteine, resistance training 3 times per week plus. A true scientist would say 3 times per week plus of resistance training for homocysteine is probably excessive. And I would agree with him. I would agree. But this is my podcast. This is my show, and I get to make the decisions here. And since it's related to performance, and since I believe that resistance training benefits go far beyond just homocysteine regulation, I absolutely think everybody on the planet should be doing this 3 times per week, at least. Supplementation, vitamin B complex. Let's get at least 50% of the RDA for each B vitamin in there to get homocysteine status regulated. Vitamin D, magnesium-rich foods is in there. And again, I didn't go over more papers in this, but glutathione actually does a cool thing, kind of like magnesium, for vitamin D, where if you give people, is actually NAC. NAC is a N-acetylcysteine, which is a precursor of vitamin D. But if you give people NAC and you improve glutathione status in the body, glutathione's involvement in vitamin D metabolism improves vitamin D as well. So in the same kind of backdoor way, magnesium helps vitamin D, glutathione does as well. Lifestyle, get 30 minutes per day of sunlight for vitamin D. I am in Canada and I do that. I believe everybody in the world can get 30 minutes. I don't think it's that hard. I'll walk my dog. And if not, I'll just be on the deck, something like that. I think 30 minutes per day is very doable. That's not a lot to ask. For supplementation, I'm not big on the big vitamin D bombs that you hear about people taking. And we'll probably do an episode on something like that in the future. But there's a lot of reasons why vitamin D can be high or low that don't have anything to do with vitamin D. But vitamin D is also an acute phase reactant, meaning it's lower in the presence of inflammation. So if somebody is currently inflamed, vitamin D can be artificially low. And then people just take these 10,000, 20,000, 50,000 IU vitamin D. I think that we're going to look back. Yeah, well, I already look at that as crazy, but I think more people will agree with me in 5-10 years. Be like, what are you guys doing? It's like, okay, well, I had vitamin D of only 20, so I took 10,000 IU per day. And then I did my blood work again in 3 months, and it was still only 20. So I did 20,000 IU, 30,000. Does that even make any sense? You're already taking a massive dose of something, and it's not moving. So do you think that's the thing? Or do you think it's the measurement quality or some other interaction? Like, just the way that logic train flows blows my mind. But that's a conversation for another day. 2,000 IU of vitamin D during the spring, and then in the fall and summer, 4,000 is plenty, you guys, to have excellent vitamin D status. And if that's not doing it, then something else is that's not vitamin D. That much I can promise you. HbA1c, cynin and polyphenols help control blood sugar status. From a lifestyle perspective, avoid prolonged sitting and maintain a healthy body fat percentage. Honestly, with HbA1c and hundreds of other things, just be leaner. You don't have to have a six-pack, but a healthy body fat percentage, 15% men, 25% women. Some people might say that that's a little aggressive. I don't think so. It's also a performance podcast. I think 15 and 25 are good places to be at for body fat percentage for men and women. And that's going to be the best, most effective thing that you do for controlling metabolic health and HbA1c as a byproduct of that. And then 500 to 1,000 milligrams of berberine is very effective at supporting HbA1c levels in the body. When should you retest? Well, if you're doing like these one-off tests, 8 to 12 weeks for homocysteine is good. 12 weeks for vitamin D is you wouldn't want to do the 8 because it takes longer to move. And HbA1c is kind of one of those ones too. It's going to take a little bit longer, so it's 12 to 16. So your homocysteine is going to move before your vitamin D is going to move before your HbA1c. What I do as a coach is just round that off to every 3 months. Every 3 months, I think, is a good spot to get blood work, or at minimum every 6 months. When you're aggressively intervening with something, I think that 3 months is a great place to be. What success will look like if you have these biomarkers optimized? Well, guys, this isn't my opinion. Let's just summarize some of the data that we've looked at here. You improve these 3 biomarkers from off to on. Improved strength and power, reduced injury frequency, improved training tolerance, improved sleep depth, improved recovery rate, reduced biological aging rate. That's a huge win. That is a massive, massive win mentally and physically for everybody watching this episode of Vitality Unlocked. I gave a preview to this a little bit earlier, but it's my firm belief that you don't close the age gap by training harder. You close it by removing the bottlenecks that make training harder. Okay? You don't close the age gap by training harder. You close it by removing the bottlenecks that make training harder. It's very easy to get discouraged to go to your recreational sport or to play with your kids or to go to the gym when you have physiological constraints that are making everything harder than it needs to be. Blood work provides the objective truth that you need in order to identify and remove the constraints. I showed you the biomarkers. I told you what they're all about, and I even gave you the protocol to take action on them. Do it and get it done. There's so much value to be had in present day and forever. And then as a send-off message here, when we look at this study of this 80-year-old, you don't get to be him because you had a health scare at 79. Okay? This is an uncomfortable truth. You don't get to be a healthy 80-year-old because you had a stroke at 79 and now you're scared and now you're going to start working out. You don't get to be a healthy 80-year-old because you had a minor heart attack or a minor heart scare at 79 and now you're scared and now you're going to start working out. It doesn't happen like that. You don't start at 79. You start now. You start now. You get blood work done. You take care of your nutrition, your lifestyle, your supplementation. You start now because building that level of fitness as you age isn't something that you do after you've aged. It's something that you do right now. Thanks for hanging out with me.